The vastness of space had never seemed so empty to Kalen Vance as it did now, staring out at the desolate landscape of Xylos Prime. The planet's surface stretched before him like a petrified ocean of rust and shadow, its stark beauty marred only by the knowledge of what lay beyond the horizon, the legendary Whispering Chasm. The silence of the barren landscape felt oppressive, interrupted only by the occasional whistling of wind across stone formations that resembled the skeletal remains of extinct leviathans. Current atmospheric readings suggest we're approaching the anomaly's perimeter. Chip's voice crackled through the ship's comms, the AI's tone clinical and detached. Based on historical data from previous failed expeditions, I calculate our chances of returning at approximately 23.6%. Kalen ignored the drone hovering at his shoulder, its metallic casing reflecting the dim light of Xylos Prime's distant sun. Once, he had been renowned throughout the Cartographers Guild, the brilliant Kalen Vance who could map the unmappable, navigate the unnavigable. Now he was just another disgraced explorer, his reputation as fractured as the planet before him. "I didn't ask for odds, Chip," he finally replied, adjusting the coordinates on the navigation console of his small scout ship, the Nomad. "Just run the system diagnostics again." System diagnostics already completed 14 minutes ago. All functions within acceptable parameters, though I question the parameters themselves given our current trajectory. The AI had been with him for years, salvaged from his last catastrophic mission, the one that had cost 17 lives and shattered his career. Chip had been reprogrammed, reformatted, and supposedly reset, but traces of that disaster seemed embedded in its algorithms, manifesting as a perpetual skepticism toward Kalen's decisions. The orbital station issued its final warning. Chip continued. "They're washing their hands of us," to use a human expression. Through the view screen, Kalen could see it, a shimmering distortion in the air that marked the boundary of the Whispering Chasm. From orbit, the formation had appeared as an impossibly deep fissure in the planet's crust, stretching nearly 1,000 kilometers, its depths lost in shadow and mystery. But it wasn't the geological formation that had earned the chasm its feared reputation. It was what happened to those who ventured inside. Ships disappeared. Explorers returned babbling of impossible geometries and haunting voices. Some never returned at all. The Galactic Survey had declared it a forbidden zone decades ago, but that hadn't stopped the rumors, the myths, the stories of voices that whispered your deepest fears and most closely held secrets back to you. "We're approaching the energy field," Kalen announced, more to himself than to Chip. His hands moved across the controls with practiced precision. This wasn't about redemption. He was long past believing in that. This was about finding something beyond the boundaries of the known universe, something that would make his failures insignificant by comparison. Engaging perimeter protocols would be the recommended course of action, Chip stated. Previous expedition data. Override perimeter protocols, Kalen interrupted. Authorization, Vance Echo 79. Override accepted. Chip replied, its modulated voice somehow conveying disapproval. Though I am obligated to note the irrationality of this decision. The Nomad pushed forward, its engines humming as Kalen guided it toward the shimmering barrier. Navigation sensors began to fluctuate wildly, readings jumping between impossible extremes. Anomalous energy signatures detecting. Data corruption imminent, Chip reported, recalibrating sensors. As they crossed the threshold, reality seemed to smudge around them. Colors blurred at the edges of Kalen's vision, bleeding into one another in ways that made his eyes water. The ship's systems flickered, displays jumping between readings before settling into a pattern of constant, minor fluctuations. "Well," Kalen said, blinking as his vision adjusted to the strangely altered light, "we're in." A statement of fact that does not acknowledge the profound recklessness of our current situation, Chip responded. "Corrupted data streams are making accurate analysis impossible." "I am uncomfortable." Kalen raised an eyebrow. "Uncomfortable? That's not in your programming vocabulary. Neither is the environment we currently occupy in established physical models. Adaptations are necessary. The landscape beyond the barrier retained its basic geological features, but everything seemed slightly wrong. Rock formations bent at impossible angles, their shadows falling in directions that didn't correspond to the position of the sun. Crystalline structures jutted from the ground, vibrating with an inner light that pulsed in complex patterns. As they ventured deeper into the chasm, gravity began to fluctuate. Objects in the cabin would suddenly drift upward, only to crash down moments later. Time, too, seemed affected. Kalen's chronometer jumped forward several minutes, then back, then stopped altogether before resuming at an irregular pace. "I am detecting temporal anomalies," Chip announced, its voice distorting slightly. "Local space-time appears to be folding in upon itself. There are moments where we exist simultaneously at multiple points along our trajectory." Kalen guided the Nomad deeper, navigating around floating chunks of rock suspended in midair. In the distance, he could see what appeared to be the ghostly outline of his own ship, perhaps an echo of their future path, or a remnant of a journey not yet taken. And then the whispers began. At first, they were barely perceptible, a background hiss that might have been the wind or the ship's environmental systems. But gradually, they formed into words, phrases, voices that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Calibration sequence failed. Life support critical. Cannot maintain orbit with these readings. Vance, we're losing control of the ship." Kalen's hands tightened on the controls. He recognized those voices, the crew of the ESS Pathfinder, his last command. The mission that had ended in disaster when he'd insisted on pushing into an unmapped nebula despite mounting evidence of unusual gravitational distortions. "These are not actual communications," Chip stated, its sensors swiveling. "I am detecting energy patterns that correspond to neural frequencies. The anomaly appears to be processing the electrical patterns of thought itself." "Their memories," Kalen whispered. "Echoes. Never should have trusted you. 17 people, Vance. 17 lives because you couldn't admit you were wrong." The whispers grew louder, more accusatory, a chorus of the dead and the betrayed. Kalen's jaw clenched as he fought to maintain focus on his instruments. "I can filter these frequencies from the ship's audio systems," Chip offered, "though I cannot prevent your direct neurological reception of them." "No," Kalen replied. "Let me hear them." He deserved this. The constant reminder of his failures, the voices of those he had led to their deaths. But rather than breaking his resolve, they strengthened it. He had come here seeking something beyond mere exploration, beyond mapping. If the voices of the dead were the price of admission, he would pay it. The Nomad continued its journey, passing through regions where physical laws seemed to be mere suggestions. In one area, crystalline structures grew and collapsed in seconds, forming perfect geometric patterns before dissolving. In another, what appeared to be water flowed upward, forming rivers that traversed the sky in defiance of gravity. It was in a field of suspended crystals, each one a perfect dodecahedron that rotated slowly in midair, that Kalen first saw her. She stood, or perhaps floated, among the crystals, her presence so startling and out of place that at first Kalen thought she must be another hallucination, another trick of the chasm. Her form was humanoid, but unmistakably alien. Skin like polished bottle glass that reflected nebulous patterns of light, eyes like molten silver, and garments that seemed woven from solidified light. She observed him with a disturbing calmness, as though his arrival was expected rather than an intrusion. "Chip," Kalen said quietly, "are you seeing this?" "I am detecting a presence, but sensor readings are contradictory," the AI replied. "Biometric signatures indicate a living organism, yet energy readings suggest a localized distortion in the fabric of reality itself. Classification is impossible within established parameters." Kalen brought the Nomad to a hover several meters from the figure. She made no move to approach or retreat, simply watching with those unnerving metallic eyes. "Hello." Kalen ventured through the ship's external comms. The response came not through the comms system, but directly into his mind, while simultaneously playing through the ship's speakers. Kalen Vance, I have been observing your approach through the echoes. Her voice was melodic but layered, as though multiple voices spoke in perfect synchronization. Chip's processing lights flashed erratically. That is impossible, the AI stated. The transmission is occurring on multiple frequencies simultaneously, including some that our receivers cannot physically detect. The figure tilted her head slightly. Your companion is constrained by linear analytical patterns. This is common for synthetic consciousnesses. Who are you? Kalen asked, his throat suddenly dry. What is this place? I am Lyra, she replied, the name resonating in a way that suggested it was a translation, an approximation of something more complex. This place you call the Whispering Chasm is an interstitial anomaly, a confluence where realities intersect and blend, a crossroads of possibility. She moved closer to the ship, her movement more like a shift in perception than physical locomotion. You have questions, but they are not the right questions. I can offer answers not to what you ask, but to what resonates within you, the dissonance that drew you here. My systems cannot validate any of these statements, Chip interjected. Extreme caution is advised. Kalen stared at the being called Lyra, feeling a pull that transcended curiosity. Every instinct honed through years of exploration told him to retreat, to report, to analyze from a safe distance. But another part of him, the part that had driven him to the edges of known space, the part that had always pushed beyond safe boundaries, knew he would follow wherever she led. Show me, he said simply. Lyra's expression didn't change, but something in the silver of her eyes seemed to shift, like Mercury responding to an unseen force. Follow, she said, and began to move away from the crystal field, her form leaving trails of luminescence in the air behind her. This decision carries incalculable risks, Chip warned. We have no data on this entity's nature or intentions. Sometimes data isn't enough, Chip, Kalen replied, engaging the Nomad's thrusters to follow Lyra's retreating form. Sometimes you have to navigate by something else. A philosophy that previously resulted in 17 fatalities, the AI remarked dryly. Yes, Kalen acknowledged. And now it's led us to the most significant discovery in human exploration. Let's see which side of the ledger this ends up on. The landscape through which Lyra guided them defied conventional description. They passed through a valley where rivers of what appeared to be liquid time flowed between banks of crystallized sound. Trees made of condensed sonic waves towered overhead, their branches forming complex wave patterns that shifted with each passing moment. Constellations formed and reformed within rock structures, mapping out impossible astronomies. Chip fell into a kind of stunned silence, its analytical capabilities overwhelmed by an environment that rejected the very foundations of its programming. Occasionally, it would attempt an analysis, only to resort to increasingly strained metaphors. These formations appear to be like the thought patterns of a dreaming universe, it finally offered. I find I must operate in poetic approximations where analytical frameworks fail. This is disconcerting. As they traveled, Kalen attempted to learn more about their guide. What are you, Lyra? Are you native to this place? Lyra's response came in a mixture of words and directly transmitted concepts that bloomed in Kalen's mind like exotic flowers. I'm a custodian. My kind exists in the spaces between realities. We did not create the chasm, but our existence became entwined with it. We seek to understand and stabilize such anomalies, but there was an incident. I am the last, or perhaps the only one remaining here. The last of your kind? Kalen asked. Images flashed in his mind, beings similar to Lyra, but with subtle variations, moving through spaces of impossible geometry, working to contain or direct energies that defied visualization. Not extinct, she clarified, but scattered, disconnected. The anomaly that was once a nexus became a barrier. Chip's voice broke in. If I may interject, her energy patterns suggest a form of existence that extends beyond our conventional three-dimensional space. She appears to be partially phase-shifted into adjacent dimensional planes. A simplification, Lyra commented, but not inaccurate. They arrived at a structure that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions despite maintaining a definite shape, a paradox made physical. It resembled a vast library or archive, constructed from interwoven strands of light and shadow. Within its impossible architecture, spheres of varying sizes floated in complex orbital patterns, each containing swirling, shifting images. The repository of moments, Lyra announced as the nomad hovered at the threshold. Fragments of lives, histories, possibilities caught in the chasm's flow. Kalen guided the ship inside, where the spheres moved around them like planets orbiting a complex system of suns. Within each sphere, scenes played out, some recognizable, others utterly alien. He saw glimpses of civilizations rising and falling in time-lapse, individual lives from birth to death, cosmic events spanning millennia compressed into seconds. And then he saw himself. In one sphere, he watched himself on the bridge of the Pathfinder, but in this version, he heeded the warnings, turned the ship around. Everyone survived. In another, he saw his own death, a different mission, a different mistake, his body floating in the void. These are other possibilities, he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Echoes of what might have been, what could be, what is elsewhere, Lyra confirmed. The chasm collects moments across the quantum landscape of possibility. Fascinating, Chip commented, its skepticism momentarily overcome by scientific curiosity. A physical manifestation of the many-worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Lyra guided them deeper into the repository, where the spheres grew more numerous and their patterns more complex. This is my purpose now, she explained. I maintain what order I can in the chaotic archive, preventing catastrophic overlap or collapse. She directed their attention to a specific sphere, larger than most. Within it, Kalen could see beings similar to Lyra engaged in what appeared to be a desperate effort to contain a growing distortion in reality itself, a hungry void that consumed light, matter, and eventually the custodians themselves. The final moments of my kind's cohesion, she said. We attempted to stabilize an anomaly greater and more volatile than the chasm. We failed. We were overwhelmed or absorbed. What remained of our consciousness scattered across fractured realities. The implication slowly dawned on Kalen. You've been waiting for someone like me? Someone who could help. I've been maintaining vigilance, Lyra corrected, sensing potential agents who resonate with the chasm's nature. Your arrival was noteworthy. Chip's analytical systems hummed as it processed this new information. Based on energy signature analysis, Lyra appears to be an incredibly complex energy pattern integrated with the anomaly itself. Her consciousness may be partially distributed throughout the chasm's structure rather than localized in her apparent form. Your companion understands more than it acknowledges, Lyra observed. She led them away from the repository, deeper into the heart of the chasm. As they traveled, the whispers that had accompanied them since their arrival grew more intense, more urgent. The landscape became increasingly abstract, geological features dissolving into pure patterns of energy and geometric impossibility. The chasm is becoming unstable, Lyra explained, her mental voice tinged with what Kalen perceived as concern. The echoes grow stronger, threatening collapse either inward or outward, chaotically merging realities. What you entered is merely an access point to a deeper, more fundamental instability. And your ability to maintain order is weakening, Kalen guessed. Yes, the burden of solitude is considerable. They arrived at what could only be described as the heart of the whispering chasm, the resonance core. It wasn't a physical object, but a focal point of intersecting probability streams, visualized as a complex, ever-shifting, blindingly intricate fractal of light and energy. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed both chaotic and patterned, like the heartbeat of a being that existed outside conventional time. This is the source of the whispers, Lyra said. the engine of local reality distortion. Kalen stared at the core, feeling it resonate with something deep within him. The whispers had changed, no longer accusing but calling, beckoning. Chip's systems whirred in what seemed like alarm. Energy readings are off any established scale, the AI reported. The pattern complexity exceeds my analytical capacity by several orders of magnitude. You possess a specific resonance, Kalen Vance, Lyra continued. Your unresolved grief, your detachment from conventional reality, your cartographer's instinct to find pattern in chaos. These make you uniquely capable of perceiving the core's structure without immediate cognitive overwhelm. I'm not special, Kalen objected. Not some prophesied hero. Not prophesied. Compatible. A statistical variable with potential influence on the core's resonance pattern. You cannot control it, but perhaps you could guide it toward stability or a less destructive state. The implications slowly sank in. What would that involve? Lyra's silver eyes fixed on him with uncomfortable intensity. Direct interaction with the core is extremely dangerous. It could shatter your mind, erase you from existence, or merge you with the anomaly itself. She moved closer to the nomad, her form passing partially through the ship's hull as though it were barely more substantial than fog. You have a choice. Attempt to stabilize the core, potentially sacrificing yourself but saving countless realities from chaotic convergence. Or retreat, allowing the chasm's inevitable collapse, saving yourself but ending limitless possibilities. Chip's voice broke the tense silence that followed. Statistical analysis suggests survival probability approaches 0. However, extrapolating from Lyra's data, the existential risks she describes are non-trivial. Kalen sat back in his pilot's chair, staring at the pulsing core. The voices of his past failures whispered around him, but now they seemed less like accusations and more like reminders of what was at stake: the value of life, the weight of decision, the responsibility of knowledge. He had come seeking oblivion or a discovery so profound it would make his past meaningless. Instead, he'd found purpose, not redemption for his failures, but the chance to prevent a greater one. How do we proceed? He asked quietly. Lyra's form seemed to brighten slightly, the patterns within her glass-like skin shifting to reflect something that might have been relief. I will serve as an anchor. Your AI can provide real-time analysis of energy flows despite continuous data corruption. You must extend your consciousness toward the core, not fighting it, but listening to its chaotic symphony, finding the fundamental patterns, the discordant notes causing instability. Chip's processing lights flickered rapidly. I must formally register my objection to this course of action while simultaneously acknowledging I see no viable alternative based on available data. I will provide what analytical support I can. Kalen powered down the Nomad's non-essential systems and stepped away from the controls. Guide me, he said to Lyra. What followed defied traditional description, a deep mental and emotional struggle/synthesis, non-visual in nature. Under Lyra's guidance, Kalen extended his consciousness toward the core, allowing his mind to brush against its chaotic energies. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to comprehend an infinite library of information all at once, like hearing every conversation in history simultaneously. But Kalen didn't try to comprehend it all. Instead, he listened for patterns, using his cartographer's mind to perceive structure within chaos. The core's energy was not random. It was a complex system of frequencies, harmonics, and resonances that had grown increasingly discordant. With Chip providing real-time analysis of energy fluctuations and Lyra serving as his anchor to conventional reality, Kalen focused his experiences, his grief, his understanding of loss and connection, into a stable frequency or resonance. He offered not control, but harmony, a counterpoint to the core's wild music. The core responded. The chaotic energies didn't disappear, but coalesced into more harmonious patterns. The blinding light softened. The whispering chasm didn't vanish, but its nature shifted, the violent fluctuations calming, the threatening whispers becoming gentler hums, the trapped moments seeming less painful, more like stored memories than tormented fragments. The threat of immediate collapse receded. Kalen withdrew, mentally exhausted but intact. Lyra appeared subtly different, less tense, the bottle-glass quality of her skin now reflecting calmer imagery. The repository of moments, visible in the distance, seemed more ordered. Chip confirmed that anomaly indices had stabilized into a new, complex baseline. The core is not healed, but stabilized, Lyra said, her mental voice clearer now. What you have done is significant. Kalen looked out at the transformed chasm. It remained strange, impossible by normal physical standards, but no longer felt malevolent or chaotic. What happens now, he asked. The chasm remains forbidden, but its nature has shifted from a destructive maw to a unique, stable intersection of realities. The work of understanding it has only begun. Kalen realized he had found something he hadn't been looking for. Not oblivion, not redemption, but purpose. He hadn't erased his past, but found a future beyond it. I think I'll stay, he said quietly. If you'll have me. As what? Chip inquired, its tone suggesting the question was only partially facetious. A cartographer of inner space, Kalen replied with the first genuine smile in longer than he could remember. Mapping what no one has mapped before. Lyra's form shifted subtly, the patterns within her skin forming what might have been her version of a smile. The echoes will still need guidance. There is much to explore now that destruction is not imminent. I lack accessible databases for this environment, Chip noted dryly, but I acknowledge the unprecedented nature of the data we could gather now. The final image was of Kalen and Lyra looking out from the Nomad into the now gentler, humming space of the transformed whispering chasm, a new, unexplored frontier opening before them. Will you be requiring a new job title? Chip inquired. Kalen laughed, the sound strange, but welcome in a place that had known only whispers for so long. No, just a new map.